How's your evening?
Not too bad. I only got home from uni about an hour and a half ago. So,
Yeah, okay, I noticed that. What are you doing at uni?
Bachelor of Business.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're at Sunny Coast.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm doing my Masters of Business there.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah. But it's an executive MBA. So what it means is it's tailored for people working full time or already in management roles and things like that.
Yeah,
It's great because it's only 3 days a month: Friday, Saturday, Sunday,
right.
and then we only go in for those 3 days in the month, and then we're left to our own devices for the rest of the month, and then the cycle starts again, sort of thing.
Yeah,
Um, but someone like me, that's a pretty slack studier, it
yeah,
does it doesn't work very well because I end up just getting stuck back into work and doing chats like this, and then a month rolls around pretty quick.
yeah. Know the feeling.
Mm. So this is your first year.
Yeah, first year, second semester. Yeah.
You enjoying it?
Look, it's great. It's self-motivated, which is good. You can do it around your schedule, which
Yeah,
works well for me. You've got obviously the contact hours, but then the rest of it's up to you to do, which is great because I'm a pretty busy guy. So
yeah, yeah. Why did you choose business?
because I've got my own ideas and plans that I want to implement in the future. So I've got a youth motivation company that we're in the process of setting up. I do the public speaking and a few other things, and I wanted the basic business skill set to be able to apply to my own companies essentially. So
Mm.
that's why I'm not looking to do it as a hire me. I want to be a manager sort of thing. It's more
Yeah,
of a for me.
for your own journey. That's pretty cool. And any reason besides location why you went with Sunny Coast?
I like the fact that it's still a bit of a smaller university,
Yeah.
which means you get sort of a bit more one-on-one time with the tutors and lecturers if you need it, and has that more personal feeling. But look, the main reason was really that it's close to home.
Yeah, yeah, fair enough. And you're still living with your parents?
Yeah, live with mum. Yeah,
Yeah, okay. Mum and dad are split up?
yeah.
Okay, got it. Mate, take me back through school. Were you always on the coast?
Yeah, so I grew up here on the Sunshine Coast. I went to school to Nambour Christian College for all 13 years, from preschool to year 12. Um, it was a great school. I loved it, and I had a good time there. Made some good mates, and again, it was sort of not a big school, but it wasn't small either, so you could still
Mm.
get that personal feeling, I guess, from the school.
Were you a good student, would you say, Lachie?
Yes and no. I like to cause a bit of trouble, but I was never doing really bad things, and I worked hard academically, so
Yeah,
I got relatively good grades.
got it. And when you finished grade 12, was it always the goal to get into uni and do business?
No, actually, I didn't. I wasn't too sure whether I was going to go to uni. I did an OP in case I wanted to,
What,
but
what's your
I
what's your
didn't.
OP?
Five,
Impressive.
not the top, but not too bad either. So I was happy with that. I was aiming for a six or below. So
The last
five was.
girl, the last girl I interviewed, she's travelled all around the world, much like yourself, but did it in a different style that I'm assuming that you did. But we'll get to that later. But her OP was two, and
Fantastic.
I think you and her might have been better suited to chat than than me. But in any case, we still had a good chat.
Oh, good. Yeah.
So an OP5, and then you kind of thought maybe not uni.
I wasn't too sure. Look, I have a lot of ambitions, and I think I'm capable of. Here, how do I word this delicately? I think I'm capable of doing them without university,
Okay.
but university would set me up to be better prepared for them.
Hmm.
So I wanted to have all my options open, which is why I did the OP.
Well,
And
let's
it
talk
looks like
about that. That's a really interesting topic, right? So, what do you mean by that? You didn't necessarily need an IP to do what you want to do. Is that what you're saying?
yeah, I'm not going to university to get a degree or have the piece of paper at the end of it that says Lockie Smart holds a Bachelor of Business. And then if I go on to do postgrad, then it'd be a master's. I'm doing it because I actually want the skills, and there's multiple ways to acquire any skill. I could do that through getting experience in the industry with professionals, or I could do it at university and get the theoretical knowledge as well. So I wasn't sure which way I was going to take it after I did the world flight. So that's why I left my options open.
Got it. Well, mate, let's dig straight into that then, because I'm assuming that, you know, you being a pilot wasn't something that you finished school and said, I'll just decide to do this. I'm assuming that it started a lot younger than that. When did you first get into flying planes?
I've always loved planes since I was little. Mum used to take me to the airport to watch the planes take off and land and just pass the time, you know, with a 2-year-old, 3-year-old.
Yeah.
And I just loved it ever since then. So I thought 80 tons of metal getting off the ground was just the coolest thing in the world.
Sure.
And so from there it progressed. On my 14th birthday, my dad bought me what's called a TIFF, a trial introductory flight. And essentially that it's just a 20-minute hands-on experience flight. And as soon as my hands hit those controls, I knew I was going to be a pilot one day. From there, it progressed. You know, we had to find ways to fund it and ways for me to find the time to do it. And it sort of became a weekend thing when I turned about 15, or just after I turned 15, probably halfway through the year, I decided I wanted to take it on a bit more. So we found a school that I could train with in aviation, the Aerodynamic Flight Academy at Sunshine Coast Airport. And I would start doing, you know, a bit of flying on the weekends or theory. And I'd work my way up until eventually I was at school in the week, and then the weekends I'd be at the flight school, and then I'd go back to normal school on Monday. And I went solo on my 16th birthday. Oh, sorry, not on my 16th birthday, but not long after my 16th birthday. And then
that was your first ever solo flight, just after 16.
Yeah, first time. And I wasn't allowed to drive a car on my own, but they let me take it.
You could fly a plane. Wow.
Yeah. And then I got my license not long after my 17th birthday.
Got it. So there's so much stuff, right? How much did this affect, did your becoming a pilot, did it affect your schooling? Like a lot of people that are very successful and talented in their chosen field, they kind of leave their schooling to the side and they just focus on their passion. Did you have an element of that?
I'm going to say no. I loved aeroplanes, but I also was very determined to get good grades at school.
Why? Why was that important?
I don't know. I guess possibly because my parents pushed me. They said, you know, you're capable of achieving good grades, so we want you to do it. I think it was also just a personal goal that I set. You know, I was never comfortable with getting an average score. I always wanted to work harder and get that sort of recognition for a higher grade, I guess.
Got it.
But I always knew I wanted to do well at school. It's always to keep your options open, I guess, and you need to have a good education to get by in life these days. So I knew that was important. I was very busy though, and sometimes that would infringe on the schooling, because I was not only doing the flying as well as school, but I was also Air Force cadets. I was in 2 bands as well, playing the trombone. I was studying the piano side of that. I was just busy all the time. So sometimes that would come at the cost of school.
How old are you now, Lachie?
19.
19. Okay. Do you feel like you've missed out on the normal teenager stuff?
Look, I wouldn't say I've missed out on it. I haven't necessarily had as much experience in it as every other teenager, because I was preoccupied with obviously the world flight and everything else.
Yeah.
That I do. But when I got back from the trip, I was determined to do everything a normal teenager does. So I went out and I did the partying, and I went out and had as much time with my friends as I possibly could, and go out camping every weekend or even in the weekdays, and just have as much fun as I possibly could and make the most of having time again before I got stuck into the next adventure, which was obviously uni. So I wouldn't say I missed out on it. I never like to miss out on anything, so I gave it all a go.
Got it. That's awesome. Do you have a girlfriend at the moment?
No. Did you
have someone throughout high school? Were girls ever a focus for you?
Yeah, obviously, being a teenage boy, definitely
sure.
part of life. But I had a girlfriend through year 12 and after high school as well for a little while, but that ended probably about a year before I took off for the world flight, which in hindsight probably gave me more time to focus on the trip, which probably, of course, wasn't preferable at the time.
Sure. And I guess that's the sole reason to ask that question is I was wondering just how much time you could give to a partner, or if you're with the partner that you can give to your other goals. So
Yeah.
you're saying that it just got to a point where these other things had to take preference.
Yeah, that's it. And I mean, it wasn't because of the flight that it ended, but it was, it definitely had an impact in the end.
Got it. Okay. At what age did you say, I want to fly around the world by myself?
What age? I was 15. It was at the end, just before I turned 16, that I made the decision to take on the world challenge. I didn't fully get into the planning until I was about 16 and a half, though.
So why? So at 15, you hadn't even flown by yourself yet, but you're already thinking, I want to do this by myself.
Yeah, so it was obviously a bit of a stretch goal or a big challenge.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, I knew it was going to be hard from the beginning. I had the idea pop into my head, I guess, when I was watching 60 Minutes. I was sitting in the lounge with Mum, and onto the telly came this 60 Minutes episode called Flying Ryan. And Ryan Campbell became the youngest person to fly around the world in 2013 at age 19.
I was going to say he was 19, yeah.
And I thought that was pretty cool. So I turned to Mum, said, "Mum, I'm going to fly around the world." And it was that simple. That's how I made up my mind.
And did you think, I want to do it younger than he was?
Yes. So I saw I had the opportunity that I was going to finish school early. I was going to graduate at 16, and I knew that would give me enough time to plan this world flight and hopefully do it safely.
How did you do that? How were you able to finish early?
I started school a year early. So I was, my grandma would look after me a bit when I was younger. And so she taught me to read while I was quite young. And they said I was welcome to start school early. And if I had any troubles, they'd hold me back in preschool, but I never had an issue until I got through a year earlier than everyone else.
So you started grade 1 at 4?
Yeah.
4 years old. Wow.
Yeah. I was 3 in preschool, yeah.
Wow. Okay.
I think that's something like that. Yeah.
Got it. So at 15, you're watching 60 Minutes with your mum, and you turned to Mum and said, I'm gonna do this.
Yep. That's it.
And then what's the next step after that, right? Because it's all good and well, and lots of us say, I'm going to go and do this, and I'm so motivated, but you've actually gone and done it. So what was the next step from just having that thought?
To be honest, I had no idea. I Googled it, believe it or not. I got on the computer and I said, how do you fly around the world? And Google didn't know either. So I started in the most logical place that I could think of, which was to plan a route or the way that I was going to get around the world. In hindsight, worst place you can possibly start. I had no idea about planning a world flight. I didn't know how long the runways needed to be, about customs and immigration, about where I could actually find the type of fuel that I needed, people at the airport, all that sort of thing had to be taken into account. And the route changed, I'd say, by a good 80% by the time that I'd finished planning the flight from that initial one. But I had to start, and that's all that really mattered.
Wow.
From there, I started talking to people. I needed a team that was going to be able to help me do this. I wasn't going to be able to do it on my own. So naturally, I got in touch with someone who'd done it all before, and that was Ryan.
Oh, you were able to get in contact with him?
Yeah, we're great mates now. We get on really
nice.
well. Catch up as often as we can. But I got in touch with him and said, look, how do you even start something like this? And so we got chatting about the enormity of this task that I was taking on.
And was he sort of saying, don't beat my record? Or was he saying, yes, beat my record?
No, unfortunately, his record was beaten by an American, Matt Guthmiller, not long after he completed the trip. I think he was only 9 days younger than Ryan when Matt finished his trip.
Got it. So he was like, let's get this guy.
Ryan was keen to help me bring the record back to Australia. But to be honest, you can ask any round-the-world pilot and record aviator, they're never going to tell you that it's for the record. And that's the truth. If you were
Of course.
trying to do this for a world record, you'd give up in the first 6 months, because it's an impossible task to take on, is what you're told. And it is very difficult to do.
Mm. Let me jump in, because we're obviously going to hopefully talk about some of the stuff that you went through. At this stage, what we're talking about now, in your head, were you like, yeah, I can do this. This is no, I'll be able to do this, no worries? Or were you going, oh, geez, this is a massive goal?
At first, there was that sort of youthful naivety. I thought, to be honestly, I at first thought it was going to be a matter of planning a quick route around the world,
getting it done,
and then take off, find an airplane and go. Yeah. I thought it'd be 2 sponsors. That's all I'd need, and an airplane. I had no idea how big it actually was. And that first phone call with Ryan was what really opened my eyes to say, well, actually, hang on a second. This is not what I was expecting. Got it.
And after that first phone call, were you still just as excited, or were you, second guessing yourself?
Look, I was excited, and but I also knew that I had a huge task ahead of me. I've never been someone who's afraid of hard work or afraid of a big challenge. So I just knew it was going to be a little bit more difficult than I first anticipated, but I was still 100% in to do the trip.
You just started talking about sponsors there, and I know that the Sunshine Coast Airport was a big help in your journey. Tell me about sponsorships. Were people on board with this, or were they thinking, oh, this is just some young kid? Were people responding?
Yeah. Okay, it was tough at first. The first year I didn't get a single sponsor. And that really knocked me about a little bit, because I thought, if in a whole year I can't get one on board, how am I supposed to fundraise $380,000 worth of cash and services? The first thing that people think when you're a 16-year-old at the time saying, hey, I'm going to be 18 and I want to fly around the world and I want to do it on your money or in your $1 million area.
That's right.
People go, not interested. Too crazy, don't want to hear about it.
Yeah.
And the truth is, I had to find a way to craft my message. I had a reason for doing the trip. I wanted to prove to young people in particular, but prove to everyone that you're capable of achieving whatever you want to do, no matter how young, old, fit, unfit, what color you are. It doesn't matter, that you're able to do it if you're willing to work hard enough. And so for me, I was proving that even though I was young, and I got teased a little bit in school because I was younger than everyone. So naturally I was a little bit petty about that. But I wanted to prove that it doesn't matter where you come from, that you can achieve anything. And as I said, whether you're young or come from a single parent family who lives in Nambour, you can do anything. So that was my reason for taking on the trip. And once I learned to articulate that a little bit better and prove that I was methodically planning this and it was going to be the safest trip it possibly could, that I had the best mentors, I had the best team behind me, and I was going to do this in the most professional way the world had ever seen, then that's when sponsors started to think, okay, maybe it is a viable option that we do partner with Lachie.
People started listening, yeah. How did you get the plane?
That was a nightmare. We lost airplanes, actually. We had people agree, we go, yes, we'll give you an airplane. And then months later, they pulled out on us and we'd have to start the whole process again.
Oh, what a headache.
But eventually, we managed to find a situation that was a win-win for myself and a private owner of this aircraft that I wanted to take around the world. It was based on the Gold Coast. And we came to an arrangement where I could pay an hourly lease for the aircraft and he'd let me take the plane around the world.
So you paid for every hour that you were flying around the world?
Every single hour, and in preparation for that as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was that a good deal for you?
I think it's one of the better deals you're going to get. At the end of the day, these aircraft cost a lot of money to run and operate, and they also depreciate very quickly. So I think it was fair, the deal that we struck in the end.
Okay. All right. So you, as you said, you planned it very methodically. You're obviously a smart kid. You could see the vision, and as you said, you got the sponsors to see the vision as well. What were the big things that you had to plan in that? It sounds like it was a 2-year process that you were planning for.
Yeah. Okay, so the first thing obviously to plan was that message, and then to get the sponsors and to sell not just myself, but to tell them that they weren't sponsoring me. Sorry, they were buying into my vision and they were buying into an ideology. But then after the money side of things started happening, it was really starting to plan the actual flying aspect of the trip, and that was certainly the most challenging part of the journey, I guess. I had to learn that it wasn't like flying in my backyard here in southeast Queensland that I know like the back of my hand and I can do it in the daylight where it's all visual flying. This was going to be flying in, you know, a number of different circumstances, different terrains, that sort of thing. It could be everything from freezing cold temperatures to sweltering heat in the desert, over water, over land. It didn't matter. I had to be prepared for everything, whether it was as well in storms, in clouds, at night, in the daytime, visual conditions. It was a lot to prepare for. So I started my training to make sure that I was going to be ready to handle the aircraft in any of those situations.
How do you train for that?
Lots of practice and with the best possible instructors. So the man who taught me how to fly is a very experienced pilot. Many thousands and thousands of hours he used to fly jets, and then he flew light aircraft and piston aircraft, and has been instructing for as long as I've been alive, I think. So he's very experienced in the area. Wow. And so I had a good mentor at the beginning. I also then started to speak to other ferry pilots, they're called, or people who fly light aircraft long distances in all areas of the world to deliver them to different owners. So these are the type of people who do the type of flying that I was going to be doing every day.
Got it.
So once I had their input and their experience combined with my own flight training, that's what led to preparing me to be ready as a pilot to actually make it around the world.
Okay. There'd be a lot of people that know you, and I've told lots of people that we're having this chat tonight, and they know of you and what you've done. And lots of people who fly planes or would like to fly planes know of you as well. What makes you able to do what you did versus someone else that would not be able to do that?
Well, the true answer is anyone can do what I did. I'm no different from any other person in the world. I'm no different from any other teenager. I didn't have a different upbringing. I don't have different parents. What set me apart in actually doing this trip was my willingness to work hard, surround myself with a great team, and put in the number of hours that I had to do to get there in the end. As I said, I came from a single parent family in Nambour, and money wasn't always there, wasn't always in abundance, and that I'm not complaining about that. I had a great upbringing, but it did mean that I had to work that little bit harder. And so people say that, I was fed this or given it on a silver spoon, and the truth is I wasn't. It was something that did happen.
You're from Nambour, for God's sake.
So that's the truth. Is nothing sets me apart. It's the mindset that came down to it in the end.
Got it. Well said, mate. You just mentioned your parents then, and you have mentioned your dad, but then you said you're brought up in a single parent home. Tell us a little bit about both your parents' influence in what you've been doing.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got great parents. I love mum and dad. They've always looked after me very well and made sure I had everything that I needed. I guess they're sort of different, my parents. My mum's very methodical and planning, and relatively quiet to people she hasn't met before. And dad is very extravagant, outgoing, and he's like a bull at a gate. He does plan things well, but he's not as methodical as my mum is. So I guess I got to draw on the strengths of both of those two opposites, I guess, and put them into a great combination for preparing for this flight. I had to have the tenacity and the gut to actually do it and say and publicly, announce that I'm going to be 18 years old and flying around the world, even when I wasn't sure that I was going to be able to make it and get through all the planning. But then I had to be able to, aside from that, when I wasn't in the public eye, I had to be able to work, 70 hours a week, 80 hours a week to prepare the route and prepare the team and make sure I had every finite detail planned out, from every altitude that I was going to fly and every single waypoint that I was going to go via.
Got it.
Down to who was going to pick me up from the airport.
So your mum's been a big influence, and saying to you in the lead up to our chat that that my mum knows you as well, and I first found out about you from my mum, and saying how amazing it was, and she was there when you took off on the journey. Do you see your dad much?
Yeah, absolutely. I saw my dad a lot growing up, and I still see him often. He lives here on the coast as well.
Okay.
It's just mum and dad don't live together. So obviously now that when I turned 17, was able to get a car license, it made traveling a bit easier, but I still saw him very often, even when I didn't have a license.
Got it. Great. All right, mate. So let's talk about, it's like you just said then, you had to verbalize this is who you're going to be before it actually happened. And I've done that myself with things, and I've verbalized something happened, like I'm going to be this person, and it doesn't eventuate.
Yeah.
But you had to verbalize that, and then it obviously did happen. Was there any points leading up to it where you thought, geez, am I really going to be able to do this?
Plenty. Honestly, there were, it goes through your mind almost every week. You're thinking, am I going to be able to actually make it in the end? And there's so many variables that go into it. Everything you can imagine, from weather to aircraft becoming unserviceable. I might get sick. The money might not come through. There might be a war breakout. Who knows?
Yeah.
There's a million things that could go wrong. And it was a matter of monitoring everything and adapting to every situation that came up. So absolutely, every time, every week something would come up and I think, oh, gee, is that going to impact the flight? The other thing that had to come into it, which has just completely slipped my mind, was the fact that, when these things would come up, it also affects sponsorship. I'd be making absolutely huge promises to these sponsors. And say, for example, when we had an aircraft taken away from us that we had locked in and planned for using on this trip, I'd be saying to a sponsor, I want $30,000 of your money, and I'm going to put your logo in a huge spot on the aircraft. We're going to promote your brand on this world flight. And the truth is, I didn't have an aircraft. I didn't know the world flight was going to happen, and I wasn't sure that I was going to be able to build a profile to actually announce and promote their brand in the positive light that I promised. So it was huge promises to make, and I had to be confident that I was going to be able to pull through on them, when even in the back of my mind, sometimes I wasn't so sure that I was going to get there in the end.
I know you said a couple of plane sponsors pulled out. Was there any financial sponsors that pulled out?
We had a lot of, we're going to partner with you. We're certain that your profile and your branding links in with ours. Let us draw up the contracts, and then those contracts would never come through. But every sponsor who sent through a contract and physically promised us the money, they all came through with that.
Okay. Are they happy with the outcome?
Look, that's a question probably better directed at them, but we didn't have any negative responses from sponsors. And I always made sure that I acknowledged them and worked as well as I could with them, because at the end of the day, without the sponsors and without the positive work that we put in with a lot of people from all areas of the globe, this trip would never have happened. And so I'm still thankful to them, and we're now coming up on a year since the trip has ended. And
we're still talking about it, right?
Yeah.
Nice. And you've been out and about, from what I can see, doing, some pretty big media, TV, radio, things like this, and still talking about the journey. And I'm sure the sponsors are more than happy with what they got out of it. We've talked about your organisational skills, which are for 19-year-old or 16, 17, 18-year-old at the time, pretty impressive. Tell us about the plan of the journey. Did you have in your head, these are the countries I'm going to stop at early on?
Every single detail I had planned out in advance. So I knew exactly which airport I was going to land at, even which airway and which instrument approach I was going to fly in every weather condition that was there. That's why it took so long to plan, because I had this planned out to the finest detail. And in the end, that was what I needed, because you came up against some situations that if you didn't have that planning, it could have been a lot worse, when you're battling accents and terrible weather, and the systems might fall apart. You've got to have those backups in place and ready to go.
Tell me about the getting your passport ready and visas and things like that? What are the challenges there?
I think the most challenging visa to get was probably the United States. I actually had to fly down.
Was it?
Yeah, I had to fly down to Sydney and do an interview with their embassy there, and it was funny. One of the questions on the forms was actually, "Are you intending to commit terrorist activities in the United States?" And sort of, if anyone answers yes to that, I think they'd probably
That's
miss the
right.
interview.
That's right.
Yeah, that was probably the most challenging one. I had to get a number of other visas for different countries as well through the Middle East and Asia. But the majority of the countries that I visited would do a special pilot visa called a tech stop visa, which essentially was you're only there for a maximum of 24 to 48 hours and enough time to prep your aircraft for the next leg of the flying, which is generally all I would need to do.
Got it. Okay. Now, the whole journey took you 54 days. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
So you were doing what you just said. You would stop at an airport for what, 24 hours, have a sleep, and refuel, and then take off again?
Yeah, so generally it'd be about 36 hours in each destination. I would land. I'd spend the night because I'd land usually pretty late in the afternoon or even the evening. I'd spend the night there. The next day I would refuel the aircraft. I would submit flight plans for the next leg, do any customs paperwork I had to do, and then I'd get up early the next morning and take off again. So that was a general sort of 2-day period at each location.
Okay. Was there any, I mean, obviously it was big news here in Australia. Was there any media stuff you were doing along the journey elsewhere in other countries?
Yeah, absolutely. I think each stop we probably would have averaged 3 or 4 media outlets per stop.
Wow.
I think in total for the entire journey from when we announced it in July 2015 till I got back at the end of August 2016, we did something like 275 different interviews.
True.
So, yeah, it was pretty full on media wise, but I had a fantastic media management team who took care of all of that for me and just said, right, you've got a phone call coming at this time, and this time, and that's all you need to worry about.
Okay.
So that was good.
Got it. What, okay, I'll ask a question before the question I was about to ask you. You're in the plane, Sunny Coast Airport, about to take off. What's going through your head?
I realised I'd actually never flown the Cirrus at night before. It's the first thing. That sounds really dumb because I've been talking about all this preparation that I'd been doing, and I'd been going absolutely insane preparing everything. But I'd done lots of night flying before, and I was qualified and competent to fly at nighttime. But as I got in the aeroplane to start it up, I realised I'd actually never flown that specific aircraft at night before.
Wow.
So that was okay though. I got in and really the feeling that I was feeling most was relieved once I'd started up, because I wasn't sure, for 2.5 years I'd wondered, was I ever going to make it to that moment where I was turning the key and starting the aircraft at 4 o'clock in the morning to start a 9.5-hour flight to Fiji, the first 24 legs around the world. And when I actually sat in the aircraft, I almost thought, well, we're all done now. We can all pack up and go home because the planning's done. And that was the biggest.
That's right. Yeah.
Journey.
Yeah, there's a really good Wayne Bennett, the Broncos coach. He talks a lot about that. He says he doesn't get emotional on the weekends because there's nothing more he can do. He's done everything he could do Monday to Friday. Now it's up to what happens on the field, right? So, yeah, similar feeling for you, right?
Absolutely. I'd done as much preparation as I could. I knew that no matter what now, I was not going to regret anything in the planning. I wasn't going to sit there wishing, I wish I had planned that a little bit better, or I wish I had that radio frequency written down. I knew I had everything. So it was now just coming down to my ability as a pilot to sort of compromise and make the most out of every situation, and then to just enjoy the trip.
And is that what was going on for you? Were you excited? Were you calm? Or was it a bit of emotion and sadness, saying goodbye to your mum and family and friends and supporters?
As I was walking out, you're a bit sad. You think you're going to miss everyone for the next 2 months that you're away. But every time I set foot in an aeroplane, it's always the same for me. I clear my mind of anything else. You don't let emotion run your body while you're flying an airplane. It's just logic and making sure that you've got a clear mind to undertake the task that you're doing. So as soon as I shut that door and started the engine, I was just completely in pilot mode. and did everything safely and made sure that I made the most of that trip.
Got it. A little bit off topic. A lot of people that get on a plane, their thoughts that they have a phobia of being in a plane in the air, and they're worried about the plane crashing. Do you, as a experienced, successful, talented pilot, ever have those thoughts?
No, I love flying. I think the odds are, don't quote me on this, everybody, but the odds are absolutely ridiculous for you actually being in an aircraft accident. You're more likely to have a car crash than you are to have a plane crash, or be struck by lightning, or have a vending machine fall and crash. I'm pretty sure they're all true facts. But
exactly.
Yeah, light aircraft, I'm not too sure what the statistics are, to be honest, but at the end of the day, I'm doing what I love and I know I'm doing it safely, and we've been trained for as many possible scenarios as you can imagine. So I'm making sure that even though I'm up there, some people might call it dangerous, I'm going to do what I love doing.
Nice. And you only live once, right? So you got to do what you love.
Got to do it well.
Exactly. Lachie, what was the scariest thing that happened in your flight around the world?
There are a few.
Maybe it's the top three.
While I was crossing the Pacific Ocean between American Samoa and Christmas Island in the Kiribati Island group, so not the Christmas Island everyone in Australia knows of, it's one that's about halfway between Samoa and Hawaii. I was crossing a region called the Intertropical Convergence Zone, or the ITCZ, and that's known for getting some pretty bad storms in it. And so I'd taken off out of American Samoa. It was still pretty dark, just on the break of dawn. And as you take a bag of chips in an aircraft, it inflates. The same thing had happened with my fuel tank. I had a little bit of an air bubble at the top of the bladder fuel tank, which is where the back seats normally go. Obviously, I had the aircraft modified for long-range flying. That air bubble had expanded and had lifted the fuel pickup out of the fuel. And so I was aware of this because when I turned the fuel pumps on to try and start a transfer to the wing tank, which is where the engine picks it up from, it was making a loud noise and I could see there was no fuel going through the line. My problem was I was now entering into this intertropical convergence zone whilst the aircraft was still too heavy for the autopilot to fly. So I was trying to hand fly the aircraft with one hand and turn around and start to burp the tank. So take the filler cap off it and massage the air out of it, and then try and fix the radios that had just broken and communicate with the team via the satellite phone all at the same time.
Wow.
So that started to get pretty rough. And as I was weaving my way through these storms, they started to get bigger as the day got on and warmed up a little bit. And they also started to close together more. So the gaps between them were getting smaller. I got to the end of what I thought was this region. It usually ends about 5 degrees south of the equator is when the intertropical convergence zone ends and you get into a nice little calm area around the equator. And I turned this corner at about 5 degrees south of the last storm. And unfortunately, as I came around, there were two more absolute giants. They were huge. And there was a very small gap between them. And there was just a line, I couldn't see any other way to get around it. Behind me, all the storms were getting bigger and closing in. And I wasn't game to try and fly an hour back through everything I'd just come through. And so I thought my only option is to go through this gap. And so I put the heading bug or the heading indicator on a heading that I thought would get me through the storms. And I went into the surrounding cloud. This is still while the airplane's very heavy, so I'm hand flying it. It's a bit hard to control. The radios were still not working because of all the electrical interference. And then the bladder tank, I'd managed to get most of the air out of it, but I still had to hold down the top with my hands while the fuel was transferring. So I'd sort of have one hand back here and the other one hand flying the plane.
Wow.
That ended up going well for me. I popped out right in between these two storms and I had this fantastic view because on my left and my right were ferocious storms. They were big, black, and there was raining and hail and everything. But straight ahead of me was this perfect tunnel with blue sky just poking out at the end, like a light at the end of the tunnel. And I followed that through and just snuck through before the two storms collided and came together and popped out into perfect weather. And the rest of the flight onto Christmas Island went without a worry. That was certainly a nerve-wracking moment.
Oh, I bet. And what goes through your head? Like, obviously, you've you've got to do stuff. You know, as you say, you've got to look after the fuel and still fly the plane and everything else. But is it in the back of your mind, I might die here?
There's no room for that. I spent 2.5 years worrying about what could go wrong and putting systems in place for everything that could go wrong. And for me, then it was worrying about what was going right. So I focused on everything that I didn't have to worry about. And then I prioritized my problems after that. So we have a saying for aviation that goes aviate, navigate, communicate. So that's the order we should do things in. So first things first for me was to aviate, make sure the plane wasn't going to crash. That included actually flying and not going through storms, as well as making sure I was getting fuel to the plane. From then, I had to make sure the navigation was on track, and I'd worry about communications later, because at the end of the day, I wasn't going to hit anyone out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean at 9,000 feet. No one else is crazy enough to fly around there at 40,000. But yeah, I just prioritized the problems and worked through one thing at a time.
Wow. Such a good story. Does that ever come out during a few drinks with your mates?
I think all my friends are sick of hearing.
Yeah, that's right. Not more plane stories.
Yeah, that's it.
What was your favourite country in your journey?
It's hard to give you a favourite country because some were absolutely beautiful, but they were really hard to work with. Others were a breeze to fly through, but I didn't necessarily have much to look at. The United States was great because it was the first time since I'd taken off from the Sunshine Coast that I actually had anything to look at other than water. And it's also very well versed in general aviation or flying with light aircraft because they have such a huge community of aviators over there. So my life as a pilot was really easy. I was doing short flights in a very friendly country with a lot of aviation facilities, and it was just really enjoyable, that part of the trip. I sort of zigzagged my way across the United States mainland and saw a few different sites that I'd wanted to see from the sky, such as the Grand Canyon and Niagara Falls, and down through Texas as well. I stopped at a place called the Hangar Hotel, which is sort of got the hotel, I guess, on the airfield. You can park your plane at the front and walk into your hotel room.
Only in America.
Yeah. And so I really enjoyed that. As far as aviating goes, America was the best.
So you kind of did Route 66, but in the air.
Yeah, on the air. I got a photo of it as well.
Wow. I'd love to see that photo. That's awesome.
It's on the Wings Around the World website. If you have a look, it should be on there.
Yeah. I'll have to have a closer look. Lachie, what would you say to a 15, 16-year-old that's sitting on the couch with their mum, maybe watching this interview or a similar one on 60 Minutes and they're thinking, I could do that? What would you say to them?
I'd say go for it. The sky's no longer the limit, so we can't be afraid to dream big. And the world's changing so fast that there are new opportunities opening up every day. But the last point that I must make with that is you can never be too prepared. So don't jump in and learn how to swim when you're taking on a trip of this proportion. It's something that you have to plan out in advance and make sure that you're ready for, because at the end of the day, it might just be your life that you're gambling with, that you think, but in reality, you've got loved ones, parents, family, and a community around you that's supporting you to make sure you get through this. So plan it well, but never be afraid to give anything a go.
Exactly. What's Lachie Smart doing in 20 years' time?
20 years' time is a long way down the track. I know the general direction that I want to go, and that's to motivate other people, not just young people, but everyone in general, to give their ideas a go. It's kind of scary how fast the world is really changing. I mean, technology is increasing every single day. We're having new breakthroughs. And if you had have told someone 100 years ago that in 100 years' time, we're going to be able to hold a little device in the palm of our hand that lets us communicate face to face with someone else on the other side of the world instantly, they'd go, amazing. You know, everyone's going to change the world with that. And who knows what's going to happen in the next 10 or 20 years' time. But it's kind of scary how fast everything's changing. So my goal is to motivate other young people and other people to embrace that change and embrace their crazy ideas and put the two together to make their own adventure, I guess, because we're only going to live once, so you've got to do it well.
And what does that look like? Because I'm assuming that's what this business idea is that you have at the moment. Tell us a bit more about that.
I can tell you a little bit. I can't tell you too much. We've under wraps it.
Oh, cool.
However, it's called Young Achievers International. And essentially, we want to sort of mix the people who are established and have the money and have the setup for doing what they want to do. And we want to mix them with the people who may have fantastic ideas and great passion to follow them through, but not the capital to put behind it. So we want to, it's almost a centralization of venture capital in a way, but we want to motivate them and help them develop a business plan and a pitch and make sure they're well established before we introduce them to our network of venture capitalists who might be able to help them make their dreams into reality.
I like it.
Very
Sounds
brief
great.
overview.
Yeah. I know Ted O'Brien, who's based on the coast, would love. I don't know if you know Ted already, but definitely get in contact with him and have a chat. It'd be a great conversation. Do you know Ted?
I do. Yeah, great bloke. We had a few chats before the trip, and we have since as well.
Yeah, nice one. I know he was doing not so much with venture capitalists, but similar things for youth entrepreneurs and stuff like that. So that's fantastic.
Generation Innovation is his program. It's great.
Yeah, nice one. All right, so you get back into the coast, and what time of day was that when you came back in?
7:30 in the morning. Was told to put my wheels down on the ground, so I landed, I think, exactly on 7:30.
Right, and your support crew was there. Your supporters were there. Your mum was there.
Yeah, I was not told anything about the arrival.
Wow.
I started asking questions from Egypt when I was in Egypt, and the team said, "You don't need to worry about it. You don't need to know anything about it. All you need to know
Oh, truly.
At 7:30 in the morning." And that sort of it had me confused. And I'm very curious, so I was asking, all the time, every day, what's happening, and they wouldn't tell me. They just give me the same answer as "get your wheels down at 7:30." So I took off at sunrise out of Bundaberg, and I stayed nice and low, and I put the water on the left and the land on the right, and I just followed the coast all the way back down to Sunshine Coast until I did a fly past and landed exactly at 7:30. It was just the most incredible experience, touching down, and I was thinking, don't stuff up the landing,
when everyone's watching.
Make it a smooth one. Actually being under the water jets, the fire trucks were there and did a big, water arch, which was very special.
Wow.
And got down the aeroplane, left the flaps down, of course, not even thinking, because I was pretty excited. And got out, and there was probably between 400 and 500 people there. It was absolutely amazing.
That's insane.
Gave everyone a wave, but then more importantly, jumped off the wing and gave Mum the first hug that we had in 2 months.
Nice.
Yeah.
She would have been a little bit teary.
Oh, a little bit is the understatement. If you have a look at any of the media clips or videos from the arrival ceremony, you can physically hear her sobbing in the audio of that.
Oh, I bet. Oh, that's awesome. Is it something you'd do again? Or something similar?
We'll get 2 different questions. Look, I swore I'd never do it again when I got back from it, because it was just so huge. It's emotionally, mentally, physically draining. Every single day you're facing new situations, new people trying to rip you off for better systems that could kill you. And it takes a big toll on you. I came back with wrinkles around my eyes and bags under my eyes and all sorts of things. In hindsight, if I would do it again. It was the most life-changing, incredible experience, but I wouldn't do the fundraising again. That was a nightmare.
Yeah, as you say, so much planning and organising and keeping everyone happy.
That's it, yeah.
When you're in a plane, in a big passenger plane, are you like a bad backseat driver?
Oh, that's a funny question. Look, I've never flown a big jet, so I can't comment on too much on their operation, but I understand a lot more about them than the average passenger does, obviously.
Exactly.
I never could. I just go along and enjoy the flights, but I love to go up and look at all the toys they've got up the front there when we land, master pilots, if I can have a poke around the plane.
What would you need to do to become a pilot for a bigger plane like that?
It's a huge journey. So once you've got your commercial pilot license, that doesn't actually license you to fly one of those aircraft. You've got to do another 7 theory tests, and you get then what's called a frozen ATPL, which is an aviation transport pilot license. Essentially, that allows you to fly heavy aircraft and big aircraft. Then you can go and sit in the co-pilot seat of these jet airliners, still technically holding a commercial license. And you've got to get a number of hours in different areas, lots of experience before you can go and do another flight test to get that final level of license, plus several endorsements on aircraft type and engine types and different systems in the aircraft. It's a long journey to actually fly as a captain in one of these aircraft.
Is that something that interests you to do that?
I love aviation. It's always a passion of mine, and I worry that if I got into an airline and became a very repetitive job, that I wouldn't enjoy it as much as I do now. Can't guarantee that. I can't see the future, but the airlines aren't my overall goal. I'm very excited about what I'm doing with business and the people that I'm able to influence, but aviation will always be a part of my life, no matter what I do.
Yeah, got it. Mate, fantastic chatting to you. You're really inspirational kid. You really are. And you would have heard that 4 million thousand times before, I'm sure. But yeah, I really respect when you're an intelligent guy, but I really respect that you've decided to do this journey. And as you said at the start, you weren't naive enough to think I'll just be able to do it. You knew there was a lot of preparation. And I think, and I'm not saying this is just young people, because there's people in their 40s, 50s, 60s that are very naive as well when it comes to starting something and then quitting when it gets a bit hard. And you obviously had lots of times when it got very hard, but persevered. And I know I asked you before, was there times when you wanted to quit? But you just, persevered. And I think for me, the biggest takeaway from our chat is that when things do get a bit tough, you've just got to find another way, right? You've got to find a way around that.
That's it. Yeah, setbacks are foundations to success. One of my favorite sayings, because that failure that you might have might just be that learning curve or that learning opportunity that you need to get it right next time.
Yeah, well said, mate. And I thank you for that. What if someone wanted to find out a bit more about you? Tell us the best way they can get in contact.
Absolutely. So I've got a website, lachiesmart.com is where you can find a bit more about me and whatnot. If you want specific information on the trip, then wingsaroundtheworld.com.au is the best place to go. But there's links to that from the Lachie Smart website as well. So feel free to get in touch if anyone has any questions or anything else that they want answered.
And it's Lachie with a Y, isn't it?
With IE.
Sorry,
LACIE. Yeah. And of course, we've got Facebook as well. Lachie Smart Adventurer is the Facebook page.
And Wings Around the World as well.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Hey, I've just remembered, and I'm so glad I did. When will your what's the show called? One year?
This time next year.
This time next year. Tell us about that.
Yeah, super excited to be on that show. It's going to be coming out on it's already out now. It's all happening every Monday night. My episode will be in a few weeks' time, so keep an eye out every Monday, and you'll see me on there and see the development of what I did over the course of a year. And
are you going to give us a scoop of what it's about?
Can't tell you too much, still under that, but you'll have to watch it and find out.
Awesome, mate. So good to talk to you, Lachie. Thanks for your time, mate.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for that.
See you, buddy.